Welcome to The Blueprint, another episode with Ariane Taylor, a good friend of mine, and also the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Luminate Wellness and Recovery. We'll talk a little bit about the things that she's done before, but I always like to underscore why we're here doing this show, The Blueprint. Too often, people don't get the opportunity to do the things that they're magical enough to create in the world, and they have a false sense of what they're capable and not capable of doing. We like to have guests like Ariane here to give us the true version of their story so that others can go out and pursue their dreams. These dreams are often with a lot of challenges and routes that require people to restart. And it's important to get that story from people who've been able to do it, who are in the midst of it, and are able to tell you truly and compassionately what that blueprint looks like. We hope you pay it forward. Welcome to The Blueprint. Ariane, I'd like to welcome you to The Blueprint. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, thank you.
For context, what brought us together is the recent wildfires in Southern California, particularly in Altadena, a historic town where you've lived, where your children were raised, where your husband was born and raised, and where your children went to school. There are things that we want to get to know about the community, why its historic significance is important in terms of the rebuilding process. But the context of how we do the show is really to talk about our guests, in this case you, and their own life story. And why is this important? Well, I met Ariane in my profession as a surgeon when I saw your place without you the first time, and then you gave me a tour the second time. She had a beautiful brick and mortar location near Beverly Hills, which was a unique location where Trinity Wellness and Recovery, where she was the founder and CEO, was located. It was one of the locations there. And I'll let you describe what that was so I can give context as to why I was impressed. Take us through the founding, and we'll talk about your journey personally later in terms of how you got there. But what was your vision for Trinity Wellness and Recovery?
So Trinity was an aftercare for people who had elective procedures where they could come and recover and then have kind of a higher level of nursing care. So when you choose to have a procedure, an elective procedure, you're a cash pay client, oftentimes you are not going to go to a hospital. So this was an in-between for going home and a hospital. So it was private duty nursing at my place, not yours. Yeah. So that's how we met. We're recovering different patients. So my vision was to provide a higher level of nursing care to patients, to be there for them in their vulnerable moments, and to make the doctor's life easier by making sure that the patients were getting adequate care, to make the family's life easier knowing that their loved one was cared for, and then of course making our clients feel loved and cared for through their post-surgical journey.
Absolutely. And in my profession as a surgeon, part of what impressed me is I know how difficult a situation it is for somebody who's had surgery, but I also know how demanding certain clients can be, and rightly so. There's a balance, and that balance is very difficult to find. Yeah. I was impressed with how well your staff initially was able to manage those requirements, especially if the ultra wealthy. She found a niche within the private pay population. Often it's not unusual for some of those folks to be billionaires or centillionaires, and there's a level of expectation. And your team surpassed it. The facility was beautiful. But what I liked was the same level of care was provided to anybody who was able to fulfill those obligations. And when I met you, it made sense. Your compassion, your thoughtfulness, it was almost as if you were built for it, which is what I want to get into in the process of getting to know you for our audience, but also trying to understand some of the challenges in nursing. Mm-hmm. And why you had to go to a private pay model and the limitations in the traditional model, and meeting even a baseline of those criteria for our patients who can't afford that. I think you have incredible insight to help us understand that. But it's important for the audience to know that she had a unique set of skills as a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, and also as a nurse to see a need, execute that need. And your clientele weren't just the ultra rich, it was also very accomplished surgeons who were out of network. Mm-hmm. So you also had to keep them happy. What was it that made them want to send their patients to your organization and your team of nurses?
The word that I heard the most was authenticity. I was very authentic. I said what I meant and I meant what I said. I wanted to fill the gap in nursing care. A lot of my clients were the ultra wealthy, high profile, but I also had moms who saved and saved and saved to have this mommy makeover or procedure done of something of the sort. And so this was their opportunity to be taken care of.
Yeah.
And I looked at every single client that we had, not as a procedure. And I think that's the issue with medical care right now, is that people were looked as their procedure. There's the tummy tuck in room 1, there's pancreatitis in room 2, there's the car accident in room 3, rather than looking at the person as a whole.
Yeah.
And so I had a unique way of looking at a person and seeing them for them in their vulnerable moment. When you're in a room with a patient in a vulnerable moment, their dollar and their bank account doesn't matter. You don't see any difference in that. They're a patient. They're someone in need of care. I have this God-given ability to find people, nurses, who are able to meet people where they are and to find nurses who are really great at being with clients in their vulnerable moments.
And that in itself is a unique gift because, as I told you earlier, when I went there without you, I knew something was different. When I met you, I was like, okay, it makes sense. But that is your gift. It's recognizing that in others and facilitating it. One of the things that impressed me about what you did while growing your business was some of those nurses that you identified as gifted in their authenticity or humanity. They had human challenges.
Yeah.
Childcare challenges.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the things you did to facilitate their being able to earn a living while you were watching their children.
2020, the world shut down. And elective surgeries for a while were not an option. And then when they were an option, nurses wanted to get back to work. Some had families at home and they weren't comfortable working in the hospital, whether it was they did or did not agree with the vaccine, whether they wanted to be around an environment where they could bring COVID home to their family. It was very concerning to them. But on top of that, they had children at home and their children were distance learning. And so you have these single moms who want to work. You have these single moms who need to work, but for a variety of reasons, they didn't want to go into the hospital environment. So I provided an opportunity for them. I said, okay, you can come and work for me, come as you are. You have children at home that are distance learning. I had an extra space. I had hotel space and I had the brick and mortar that we talked about, and there was an extra room in there. And I said, bring your kids to work. I will sit with your kids, make sure that they stay on their screen and they do their distance learning, and you work. You work your nursing shift, and I'll be here with your kids and I'll provide a space for that. I think that's actually one of my proudest moments. I think just providing the opportunity.
And I think it ties to where we are now in terms of thinking about your community, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to have discussions about it. It's been so apparent, and I think it'll come out today in terms of how passionate you are and how heartfelt it is.
Yes.
Which is why I have Kleenex even on my side. What I wanted to kind of get a sense of was, take me behind the actions. Everyone has a reason for how they are. Part of it could be part of the business model, which I think is brilliant. But too often it's really because of something else, like this kindness and empathy that you show to these talented nurses. Take me back to who you are and where that comes from.
There's a few places. So when I grew up with my Italian grandparents, and I'm mixed.
Yeah.
And I grew up in this home where I was very well loved. But when I sat around the dinner table with them, because I was the only mixed one there, I didn't quite look like everyone. I went to a private school. There was a lot of sacrifices there, and I went to a private school, and I didn't look like everybody there. And I wasn't black enough for them. I wasn't white enough for them. And I was very much the school nerd. I was very awkward, and I was made fun of every day. And I sat by myself at lunch every single day. And as I grew older, I got to this point where I said, this is who I am. You like it, you love it, or leave it. I'm not going to try to fit into this box. I'm not going to try to fit into this box. I am going to be me, and whatever I am comfortable being, whoever I feel my best self, that is who I'm going to be. But there was a lot of heartache that came with being the school nerd or not having friends or kind of being the outsider. So fast forward to being a nurse, I get to sit with people every day and be in their most vulnerable moments. And I get to tell them, you did this for a reason, you're here for a reason. It is okay to be vulnerable, and it is okay to be exactly who you are in this moment. And every time I sit with a patient and I talk with them, or anytime I train nurses, I tell them, find out who their family is. Find out what makes them happy, because that's going to be able to make you care for them more. I want to know who they are authentically. I want to know that it's okay to be vulnerable. And every time I train a nurse like that, and every time I sit with a patient like that, I'm speaking to that little girl in me who was very vulnerable and who was very scared and was very alone.
And I find that it's easy to have that professional veneer,
Yeah.
because you can almost go through life not feeling anything, right?
Right.
But you also miss out a lot.
Yes.
And in my own journey, I've kind of gone through that. And, I'll share a tear with a patient sometimes when it's real and authentic. Mm-hmm. And this is real for me because I have a daughter who's 7, who's biracial. And so she goes to a school where people don't always look like her.
Yes.
And as you were telling me, I could imagine her at her dinner table, and she has an awareness. So how old were you when you came to that epiphany? Like, this is exhausting. I'm just going to be myself. Do you remember?
I think it started in my early to mid-teens. It was like 14, 16. It started in there. I don't think I really came into that until I was in my mid-20s, I would say.
Wow.
But it has been a process to stay in that, because those old habits die hard. I call it those Jello years, right? When you're younger, the Jello hasn't set. So the life is throwing things into you before your mold sets. And so it's very difficult to take those good and bad things out of the Jello mold once the mold has set.
That's interesting.
And so I think I was in my mid-20s, and I still to this day, have to be very aware of who I am. And when I walk into a space, who do I want to present myself as? Is it authentically myself?
I think, and there's a lot of assumptions because my experience is different. I grew up in Africa and then I moved to South LA. So everyone kind of looked like me until I was pretty set. And now I have to be aware of my children's experiences. And my assumption is, when you're a child, you are accepted by your immediate families. They take liberty to say things because you're so accepted,
Yes.
not knowing, they
absolutely.
forget. So sometimes not only do they not have the tools to potentially get you to where you got in your teen years earlier, like you have to kind of do a lot of it yourself, even though you were loved. So my question for you is, for little girls and boys watching that are you or that are parents that could be Caucasian or Asian or African American who have children with shared identities, what were things that you would now give that little girl that could have made that process a little bit easier for you?
The race is one thing, but there was also many other things about my upbringing that were not typical. I had my grandparents, I had a single mom, my mom had a disability, my mom had an addiction issue. It's not just race. It's something. Every family has something. So I want people to, one, know that they're not alone in that. You're not alone in your discomfort. You're not alone in that feeling of feeling different. I also want them to know that you will be okay and that you can use all of those differences as tools and strengths to make you your best self. It is not something that is meant to hurt you. It is not going to hurt you. As long as you position yourself to have that difference give you strength, realize that that is your superpower. It is not something to be ashamed of. Be proud of whatever that difference is.
Yeah. It's interesting because you're sharing your lived experience, and I want to go back to your experience as an entrepreneur to give it even more context. People look at entrepreneurs and they just see like things on Instagram and they think it's easy.
Yeah.
They see like a Lambo or Ferrari, fake private jets, people taking pictures. So there's a false sense of, what it is. It's extremely rewarding, but it has a lot of challenges. And in your space, because of my familiarity with the stakeholders, so you're dealing with, again, people who have the resources where everything goes the way they want in their other world. So they bring that expectation to your concierge level of care. And then you're also dealing with doctors who have the same thing. Sometimes those expectations are legitimate, other times it's a little bit over the top. That you're also given the validation in the marketplace and your growth, it attracts investors. You're also dealing with different types of those kind of sophisticated investors. And you've been able to manage it and make all kinds of decisions around that. On the business side, how have you grown from when you first decided, I think I want to be a nurse because it will be fulfilling, from your successful real estate career to now?
I've grown because I failed. I failed many times and I tried again. When I got into nursing, I was watching TV and I saw Hurricane Katrina and the devastation in that. And I was in real estate and there was all this creative lending going on. And I said, I want to do something different. I need to do something. I need to help. And my full intention of being a nurse was to join the Peace Corps. That's what I wanted to do. I said, I'm going to join the Peace Corps. And then my husband proposed my first semester in nursing school, and he's like a corporate America guy. And I was like, well, I can't travel the world while this guy's being corporate America, so what's the happy medium? And I said, okay, I'm going to do Operation Smile. And with that, I had to align myself with plastic surgeons. So I went to my school counselor and I said, I want to work in cosmetic surgery. And she said, it's impossible. You can't work in cosmetic surgery. You have to know someone to get in. You have to have years of experience. And I said, oh, okay. I want to work in cosmetic surgery. And she said, it's going to be difficult. I said, oh, okay. And then about 2 weeks later, the career counselor calls and says, you'll never believe this, but they're looking for someone with sales experience. So my real estate experience came in handy, who has a nursing background and is comfortable around high-profile people. One of the jobs that I had during nursing school was working on the production staff of the Oscars and Emmys, working with the seat filler crew. And so I had this resume that was just, happenstance that just worked for this
You're
industry.
dealing with the same kind of people.
I'm dealing with the same people, just in a different environment, right? Right before award shows, right before they have their little nip and tuck.
Yeah.
So I go and I interview and I meet this woman who's running an aftercare like I opened, and I learned the ins and outs. But I listened to the nurses, because I was in charge of the nurses, and I listened to the nurses.
Their complaints.
Their complaints and their
That
concerns.
weren't being heard.
That were not being heard by the owner. And I would go to the owner and I would say, listen, if you want these nurses to show up and work, this needs to happen. Or your patient satisfaction is low. It's because of the nurses, because they're not happy here, or because there's these gaps. And so she was like, if you think you're so good at it, do it. And I said, okay. And I managed it. And her revenue went up, and the nursing satisfaction went up, and patient satisfaction went up. And long story short, she didn't like that I was doing well in her space. So we parted ways, and then I opened my own business.
Yeah. You said something interesting. I think anyone that I've known or we've interviewed here who's been successful, there have been failures along the path. It's almost par for the course. Mm-hmm. But I think in this space it's very interesting because in my professional analysis as a physician, there are so many difficult things to bring to the table, which you did really well. Those were not where the areas of failure were, right? Like patients loved your process. Mm-hmm. Your doctors loved the process. They even came with you when you would leave and start things. And the blueprint always wants to expose these, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody's on your side, right? There are market forces that are there to exploit someone who's talented and gifted and which the market likes, right? Because can you go into detail in general terms in terms of the areas? Because in my opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, It wasn't the lack of patients. It wasn't the lack of doctors who wanted to work with you, right? What were those challenges that instead of facilitating the growth, created thorns that created those perceived failures?
There's a few things. I think for me, I come from very humble beginnings, and so everything's kind of been, I've had to be scrappy. So there was a lack of resources in some area. There was a lack of knowledge for me in some areas as a businesswoman. I mean, I literally Googled how to open a business, and then I did it. And, I had a real estate background. I had a nursing background. I had no one in my life that was an entrepreneur. I came from, my grandparents were immigrants. My mom was a nurse. There was no one with a business background. So the knowledge resource wasn't there, the financial resource wasn't there, the education resource wasn't there. So a lot of it the failures came from lack of resource. Also, I made some knee-jerk decisions, just like, yeah, this will be a good idea, without doing my due diligence. I think that's, with Trinity, I tried to make things work that weren't working, square peg round hole, for the longest, because I didn't want to let my employees down. I didn't want to let the doctors down that I was working with. But once I figured out, like, this isn't a failure, this is an opportunity or a stepping stone, I was able to close Trinity and reopen Luminate. And Luminate is my current company, and it's doing well, just kind of from the past mistakes that I've made and learning those things.
And Illuminate, the concept, the goal is very similar, if not identical. Instead of being a brick and mortar place, the real value of your company was always the care, the know-how, and the fact that they specifically want that model of care that you provide.
Correct.
Talk about your vision for Illuminate, given the lessons you have and assuming the resources are not an issue. Where do you see it, and what are its goals according to your vision?
Medicine in general is becoming concierge. Doctor, with the insurance companies and the way insurances are, it is difficult to provide the level of care that patients and clients deserve. Doctors are going towards this cash pay model. But that we still have this home health industry that is mirrored after insurance companies. So my vision is to align ourselves with the concierge doctors and kind of mirror what they're doing for their patients. So what I would like to continue doing is, once the doctors diagnose and provide this high level of care, I want to continue that level of care. And I want to stay by their side as they recover, as they rest, on their wellness journey. And I want there to be close attention to detail. And I want to sit with them in their vulnerable moments and then relay that back to the doctors. I see this being something locally. I see this being something nationally. And I see this being something internationally. I have a wonderful business partner now, Yvette, and we are very aligned with the same vision. We want to provide exceptional customer service, excellent nursing care in the comfort of their homes or hotels, and we want to provide it to everyone. So while we have these people who have the opportunity and the privilege to pay for our services, we can still find a way to contribute to our community who may not be able to afford it, but we want to be able to find a way to provide this to people who can't.
Some of your customers are reaching out to you from other states and wanting to have your nurses in other states.
We're traveling locally, we're traveling internationally, we're finding ways, and we're finding the nurses that are willing to go and do that, provide that level of care.
And that's amazing. And we'll come back later to your personal story and what makes you, your children, all of these things. But what I really want our audience to understand is entrepreneurship, even though not easy, is extremely rewarding, and it's really impacted who you are. And I think you share the idea that others could do it as well.
Absolutely.
Right. But one of the things that make me admire you is, even now as your business is growing, you've had to deal with this in the context of a major wildfire that devastatingly affected the community that you live in, but also affected you and your beautiful family and your school. Let's go back to the beginning of January, before anything happened, and people are making their New Year's resolution, both in terms of your personal life, your professional life, your company. What were you thinking about 2025? Forget the fires. Like, what was your vision 2024 into 2025?
2024, I closed Trinity. I opened Luminate. Luminate was phenomenally successful. It was going to be our first year of like the full calendar year of Luminate being open. Sky was the limit. We had great connections, we started to have some great resources, and things were moving forward. So I was excited about that. With Trinity being the brick and mortar, that previous year I had worked Thanksgiving, I had worked Christmas. In 2023, I had worked New Year's, and it was taking a toll on my family. And I had closed the chapter on that. And I said, no, I need to position myself where I can be more available for my children, still be able to make my own schedule, still be able to run a business, but not be so tied to a business that I can't give my family the attention that it deserves. So I was very excited moving forward into 2025, with this opportunity that didn't kind of anchor me to my brick and mortar, but gave me the opportunity to be with my family, but still grow a successful business. So that was the vision. I had my 14-year-old son was going to be going into high school. My 11-year-old was going to be going into middle school. So we were doing school applications and interviews. My second grader was thriving, and we were doing gymnastics and dance classes. So you think about all those things to come in that year and all the milestones that were going to be made, not just for me personally, but professionally. We had that vision in front of us of just of opportunity.
Yeah. And it's interesting when we took a tour in anticipation of this podcast and the community, I just can't stop thinking about that little bunny.
The Bunny Museum.
Yeah. Can you talk about the Bunny Museum a little bit?
So, Altadena is this great place. It's got these great small businesses and these just interesting things about it. It's got an interesting history, but it had interesting people. And part of the community, we had this couple who had a bunny museum. Guinness Book of World Records for having the most bunnies. Just different statues, figurines, sculptures of bunnies, and it was a catty corner from our kids' school. So we would pass it every day. We would see it, and we'd see the bunny out there and different bunnies on the roof. And that was the community of Altadena. It was just this great place for eclectic and interesting people to do whatever passion it was that they had. And if your passion was a bunny museum,
it was right there.
It was right there.
And that's kind of what we're trying to do here is paint this picture of what Altadena was. Mm-hmm. I always knew it as one of the Dinas, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and really learned a lot about it recently and came to love it. Your husband was born and raised in that community.
Correct, yes.
You came into that community later, right? Mm-hmm. So when you first came into that community, how did you see it then? How was it different? What was unique? What did you love?
When my husband and I started dating, because we've been together for 20-something years, 20-some-odd years, I heard the stories of what my husband told me what the community used to look like. And then as I lived there I saw how it was growing. The one thing that it always was diverse. And I loved that. And not just racially diverse, but socioeconomically, just across the board. There was different religions. Every single thing was there. And it was respected. It was loved. People took care of everyone there.
Yeah.
And I immediately fell in love with that city just because it spoke to my soul. People just took care of their neighbors. We had this wonderful woman, Dolores, who lived at the local bus stop. And everyone knew Dolores. And when it was too hot, we brought her ice cold water. And it was too cold, we brought her blankets. And if it was raining, we made sure she had an umbrella. And we made sure that she was fed. And that was Dolores's bus stop. And if Dolores was gone for a couple days and she was sick, we made sure no one else stayed on Dolores's bus stop. And she passed away in 2024. And there was a beautiful outpouring of love and support where people were drawing artwork of Dolores on the bus stop and leaving flowers and candles. We take care of our community. It's just a beautiful place. It's changed. It's gentrified a little bit.
But the values haven't changed.
The values have not changed. It's always been this way.
And then the school where your children attend,
Yes.
St. Mark's, which unfortunately burned down,
Yes.
it espouses a lot of those values. And when I came to visit, I felt it. Just a few people driving in and out. Mm-hmm. There was a sense of unity.
Yeah. The church was there first, and, Altadena was one of the few places where there was not redlining. So anyone could go and buy a home there. Going back even further in history, and it's a whole history lesson, but even abolitionists would come there years and years before that, and it was a safe place and a safe haven. So fast forwarding, even just buying property was something that people could do, and they could live and work in the community, regardless of their race. And that was a beautiful thing about it. But the church also supported that. And when the school was founded in the 1960s, their original, values and missions, it was for the community. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something, in other parts of the country, it was a fight to integrate the schools. Whereas in this part, it was, you are welcome.
But what made it unique in that way, in your opinion? I know it's historical. It just was.
It just was. Altadena drew people with like-minded values. Yeah. You find people where you're at home. They found each other. This is where you go to be a part of community, true community, the way the world is supposed to be. And so I think people who knew that were drawn to Altadena, and that church represented that, and then St. Mark's School represented that. It's a private school, but it was a school of the community. It's always been a school of the community.
Yeah. It's interesting. So you grew up as a little girl who felt really at home with your grandparents, and then you had your own experience that was unique. And you go into this community, you fall in love with it, somehow it connects with you in the way that it connects with other people who appreciate diversity and a sense of community. And everything changes around January 7th.
Yeah.
Take me to your first observation from your home of something in the mountains burning.
We had spent January 6th preparing for the winds. We have this Altadena meteorologist who focuses on Altadena weather, and he was warning everybody.
He's a young man. We're trying to get him on the show. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He saved a lot of lives.
Yeah,
he really did. So we spent January 6th just preparing for the winds, and we went to the local hardware store, True Value, been there for years and years. We bought a generator. We filled up some propane tanks, and we got some non-perishable food items, and we had the kids with us, and we were driving them around with us, preparing for the winds. My husband went out and cleaned up the entire yard because he didn't want anything blowing into the neighbor's yard, and tied up any loose ends in the yard. And then we were at home, and kids were just kind of playing games, watching TV. Kind of the winds had really kicked up, so my middle daughter Gianna was just standing there feeling the wind. She just loved it. It gave her just this feeling of freedom, and I can hear her and my younger daughter just laughing in the wind, feeling the wind. Then the wind started getting too strong, so we had them come in. I cooked dinner. I made some pasta, and we were sitting around the table and the kitchen island, and then the power went out. And so I thought, oh, okay, power's out. We're prepared for this. The kids got a little nervous because it was in the evening and it was dark. And we said, no, we're going to be fine. And we had our little lantern, and we started playing a game around Kids Against Humanity or whatever, whatever that game is. And we were playing that. And where we live, we're further up into the mountains. So once the power goes out, there is no cell service. There's no Wi-Fi. You're not getting calls. And so depending on where you stand in the house, sometimes you can get a message that comes through. Mm-hmm. But with the winds, the cell towers were down as well. So no messages were coming through. And I moved a little bit, and I heard a ding on my phone. I was like, oh, I got a message. And I look at my phone, and it's a WhatsApp message that just randomly came through. And there's this wonderful organization called Private School Village, which supports Black and brown kids who are at private schools. So it's just a community for them. And I get this message from the Private School Village group, and it said Lavinia is evacuating, families from Lavinia. And that's the name of my little gated community in Altadena. And I looked at it and I said, Steph, they say and he's like, oh, they're overreacting. And I said, oh, okay. He's like, let's just finish playing our game. And I said, we should probably pack a bag. And he's like, no, we'll finish this round of the game and then we'll get some stuff together. So I sat there for a second, and my mommy gut was like, no, something's not right. And I looked at my husband, and I was like, we're going to pack a bag. And he got a little irritated with me, and we exchanged a couple words. He was like, fine. And then I got up, and we had these two beautiful French doors that overlooked the mountains. And then the opposite direction is the hallway. So the kids go down the hallway, and I just go to look out the door. And the mountain is ablaze. And
Give me like just a visual of like how big was it?
you just see the mountains in the background, right? And I would love to open up the French doors and you could see the snow-capped mountains. You could see the frost, the fog over the mountains. Like that was one of my favorite things about living there. And I looked off to the right, and it was like an orange glow you couldn't see the mountain. You just saw an orange glow and a line of fire. And I called my husband over. I said, Steph, come take a look at this. And he looks, and he immediately changed. He was like, oh. And he got everyone into gear. And he's like, this is what you're going to pack. This is what you're going to do. Let's go. We're going to get moving. And so I left. I got some things together. The kids started getting very nervous and crying because they came and looked too. I started like kind of joking with them, like, Gianna, you're a newscaster, and you're going to report on the news. And I was kind of recording her a little bit. And it kind of brought the tension down. But as they were packing, I went and I looked outside again. It had doubled in size. In that short amount, in moments, it had doubled in size. And I looked out, and a gust of wind came. And I saw this, I don't know if it was a bush or a treetop, or I don't know what exactly it was, but I saw it pick up from the mountainside, spin around like a fiery tornado, land on the mountainside, and just engulf. Again. And I said, Steph, we need to go. And he looked outside and he was like, yep, this is what we need to do. But while we were packing and loading up the car, our neighbor came to our door. Are you guys leaving? Are you okay? We're leaving. We're packing up. A few minutes later, someone with a headlight comes running up the street. You guys okay? You leaving? Yes. So then we say, okay, we got to go check on these other neighbors too. We need to make sure that they're leaving because we know that no one has cell service up there. No one knows what's happening. You can't see it. The smoke hadn't quite reached over there yet. There's some people who are older in the neighborhood.
And this is on the 7th?
This is on the 7th. This is when it first broke out.
Yeah.
This was minutes after the fire originally
We
started.
had one of the captains over, and it really aligns with what he said. Like, they were out at the first fire. It was contained. 1 minute later,
It was because the winds, it didn't stand a chance. It had been, the mountains were dry. There hadn't been a lot of rain. There was a lot of wind. And once it sparked, there was no stopping it. We're running out the door. And I said, Steph, and I kept telling the kids, don't worry about that. We'll be back for this. Don't worry about it. We're going to be back for that. You don't need that. We're going to be back for this. Just get your basics. We don't want to be around this smoke. We're going to come back home. And we were walking out the door, and I said to my husband, you know what? Grab my grandparents' urn and grab their love letters. And he was like, okay. And he grabbed them.
what made you think that? I have friends who lost all of the above.
I have no idea. And I've thought about that a few times. I'm trying to sit back to the moment. I had a very strong connection with my grandparents. There is a lot of what I do is to honor their sacrifices and what they've done. The love letters were the beginning of everything. I used to have a picture of them, and underneath it said, all because two people fell in love. My grandparents' love story was something out of a fairy tale. Wow. They've been through trials and tribulations. They lost their son, who my son is actually named after.
Really?
Yeah, they had a lot of trials and tribulations. But they loved each other, and they created this beautiful family, and they created an opportunity. And they did it out of nothing, literally nothing. So a lot of what I do is in honor of the struggle that they've made. And it's actually yesterday I told my middle daughter, I said, she was having a hard day with anxiety over all of this. And I said, listen, we come from a long line of strong women, and this fire is not going to end that tradition of strong women, period. We're scrappy.
What was your grandmother like?
She was stern, and she didn't give her love easily. But when she loved you well. She showed you by cooking for you. She showed you by making sure your clothes were ready, your lunch was prepared. She always opened the door to you. And for my grandfather was the same way. He would literally give you the shirt off his back, quite literally. They always put everyone else first, always. They just loved so well. So when we were leaving, I think in the middle, something in my spirit was just grab the love letters, because that's where everything started. It started with them. And I was thinking like, well, this is an experience. This is a journey. And I think that triggered that in my mind, because what we tell our kids also is life is about experiences. You go where life takes you. I always tell them that. Go where life
I've heard you
takes
say that before.
Go where life takes you. And so I think
Where are those love letters and those urns?
they're at my childhood home now, back at my mom's house. We drove them where my mom lives now, my grandparents' house. And we drove them over there. We put them back on their mantle with the love letters right there where it all started.
And it's hard to speak for a city, but I think you've lived there long enough and you have the fibers of that city in you. But also as a community member, when you look back now, I'm sure there are moments of sadness and moments of what if. Are there any warning signs leading up to the fire that may have been missed, that could have led to a different outcome? Or is there a sense that the weather conditions were so overwhelming that many of those signs wouldn't have made a big difference? What's the general sense in the community, and what's the sense for you?
The general sense in the community is that it could have been avoided. There was a perfect storm of disasters that everyone saw, there was a warning for it, like the mountains are dry, the winds are here. If there's any spark of anything, we will be in danger. Edgar, like we just spoke about him, said, pack up your important documents, face your car facing out, and be ready to go at a moment's notice. Because if these fires start, it will be catastrophic. I have my opinions, strong opinions, and I think it is the strong opinion of the community that if the power was out in the mountainside, that this could have been avoided. There could have been another spark from something else. There's a whole bunch of shoulda, woulda, couldas.
No, but this is important to talk about, right? Like, because if you don't talk about it, and if all of it is, it's just the weather, you can't prepare for the next one. What should the rebuild look like? And given Altadena's unique position, doesn't have its own fire department, right? Does it have its own mayor? I don't know either. I don't think it does. No. So the community's voice is important.
Community's voice is important.
And again, I'm putting you in that tough position, as I will Jen Tolbert, who's head of school of St. Mark's shortly. Part of the goal of this is to incorporate the voice of the community as a leading agent of facilitating any of the things that are done for the city of Altadena. In terms of decision making, right? For a lot of those things, any awareness of how the decisions that affect the city of Altadena are made, if they're made, the unique jurisdictional presence,
So this, and I'm going to be very honest, that's not my strong suit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That is not, I don't want to speak on things that I'm not 100% confident on. There are the powers that be that make the decisions. It's unincorporated Los Angeles. I don't know who makes all the decisions over this, that, and everything else.
Got it.
I can tell you, so I can give you a general idea, but I don't want to misspeak. And
it's okay, but it's like, not from a position of authority, but as a community member.
Yeah.
I think it would be a disservice to expect people in the community to be correct about everything, but they're greatly affected by this. I came and took a tour with you of the community. I saw blocks on blocks on blocks of burned homes with chimneys only, right?
Yeah.
If I'm in that position, even just seeing it, I would be upset. And even if those tables currently don't have significant allocation of seats for the people in the city, I think it's important that that happen. And so one of the areas is power and the decision as to when and how power is turned off. Yeah. What are other things that you think could potentially be part of that calculus, like things that could decisions that could impact future fires or future build out.
Yeah, there has to be a better plan in place. I think that's the first thing. There was no, the warning was poor. There was no 3 o'clock in the morning, I think, is when they started going door to door and sending out emergency alerts. So that's the first thing. That's very concerning that there was no warning. The power lines should be built underground. That's a company decision based on finances, that's a Southern California Edison decision.
But just having the conversation is important.
Yes.
And we plan to have Edison here to give an accounting of that and to see how we can change things moving forward. Yeah. But again, people impacted by this have to give this a lot of thought. One of the things I was impressed upon is even as people move on, their daily decisions members of your community have to make.
I have a hard time getting caught up in the coulda, woulda, shoulda. What are we going to do right now? We have seniors that are displaced. How are we going to help them? Mistakes were made, and now the innocent are affected. So how do we help the seniors? How do we help the children who are displaced from their school, where that was their home away from home? So now they're missing their home and their home away from home. So we could sit there and point the fingers, and we could sit there and say, they should have did this or could have did that. But that doesn't help our community right now. So keeping everyone in the forefront of their mind, solving their immediate needs, and then moving forward to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And if God forbid it does happen again, a better plan is in place so people are not scrambling the way that they are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. In terms of those immediate needs, what would you say are the top 3 or 4 immediate needs for the community?
There's a shortage of housing, so affordable housing. There's a shortage of affordable housing. I think we need to connect with our seniors to make sure that there's no cognitive decline with them. Being displaced from this community that they've lived in for 60 years, are they being well taken care of? What's going to happen to their lots of land that they've lived in? Are they going to be able to rebuild? Is it appropriate for them to rebuild? Is it the best for them? And if it's not, where are they going to go? Are they going to be okay? Are they going to be safe and well taken care of?
And not everybody will have, I think I read somewhere that one of the burn lots just sold for like over $500,000.
Yeah.
Some people have challenges in that department in terms of the rebuilding. One of the things we talked about seniors, the cognitive decline is an important one that I think you're uniquely perceptive about as a nurse. But in terms of even being able to file paperwork, remember the concern that you mentioned?
Absolutely.
How challenging that process is. Can you talk about what that's been like for you and what you presume that's like for some of those seniors?
I'm very thankful that there is a disaster relief center right there in Altadena, but some of those people are not in Altadena right now. They're out wherever their family is or further out where they can afford a place. Those are great resources because they will sit down with you and help you upload documents. But if you are a senior and all of your documents are paper form, your insurances and your claims and all of your evidence, your proof of X, Y, and Z to file a claim, if those are all gone in the fire, now you've got to create an online account. Now you've got to download it. That is not in their skill set. That is not in their wheelhouse. So who are those people helping them? So we need to make sure. It has been taxing on me, an able-bodied person who knows how to do it. It is emotionally and mentally overwhelming because there's so many steps to do for myself, my husband, my family, even with my husband helping, it is a lot to do. So I can only imagine how that is for someone that isn't their skill set. So we need to make sure that we're coming alongside them and helping them in these things so they don't miss out on opportunities.
I would love to get offline a better understanding of the Disaster Relief Center. I spoke to someone. LA County has an initiative called Delete the Digital Divide. And I think they gave some computers to some of those seniors. But to your point, it's not just having a device, it's knowing how to use it.
Knowing how to use it.
And how to use it for specific things in this area. I sense an openness on their behalf. I'm sure there'll be somebody at the Disaster Relief Center. Because you guys are trying to do your own thing and make sure But I think you placed that on my heart last time we talked. I think tapping into Altadena's DNA of always looking after each other
Yes.
is going to be an important part of the unique build out for Altadena.
Yes.
Especially given some of our friends in the Palisades are experiencing some of the same heartbreak. But the resources, not everybody, but some of those communities have is different.
Yes.
In terms of what you're seeing on the ground now, the phase one, where they were doing some of the studies, apparently was over recently.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening on the ground in terms of how the community feels our upcoming criteria? Because this is a long, arduous road, unfortunately. What are the things that your friends and neighbors are talking about, and what do they need?
We want to make sure that our community is not forgotten about. We want to make sure that our lots of land, like if it is best for a family to move away, absolutely. If it is best for them to relocate, do it. We do not want the land sold to major corporations and turned into apartment complexes and big buildings, because that is not what Altadena is. For those that are choosing to stay, it is not what's best for them. It is not the DNA or the fabric of Altadena. If they need to move away, we understand. That is, you have to make the best choice for your family. But these corporations that are coming in and buying up land and outpricing people who want to stay in the community. Their house, there's a unique opportunity. If their house burned down, but they want to build, if a family wants to build on another lot, or if another family who has like values of Altadena wants to come in and take advantage of an opportunity, they're going to get outpriced by a corporation who can just put down a large chunk of change.
Is there a platform for those voices? Or, it'd be interesting to know what the process of what that build out would look like. At the school at St. Mark's and some of the meetings that you're privy to, what efforts are being made to make sure those voices are, if not front and center, at the table? Do you feel confident that will happen?
At St. Mark's?
St. Mark's, but in Altadena in general, to address some of the concerns you raised.
I 100% think that Jen Tolbert is going to make sure that her voice is heard, our voice is heard as a community. I have concerns. I want to make sure that our school community, I know it's going to be a long road for St. Mark's. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be St. Mark's, and it's going to be Jen. I don't have any doubt. We are in an instant gratification, on to the next story. We're so fast moving, on to the next disaster. I don't want Altadena to get left behind or lost and on to the next disaster. We need to make sure that people understand that this is going to be a long road, a long journey. There are so many factors that this disaster has brought forth. We can't get lost in the shuffle. There's so many different community members that need to be heard and need to be valued. So we need to keep getting our voice out there. And that might be a struggle just because of with how society is now. We're on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. But Altadena is the next and the next and the next. So we are going to, if I have to show up on every corner and speak to every person,
podcast,
I will do it single-handedly. But I am just one of thousands of people who believe in this community. There are people who are so more well-versed than I am, who have been in Altadena for years and years and years, or so just intertwined with the community that they're going to do everything possible to rebuild it with the fabric that truly of what it is.
And let's talk about your children's school, St. Mark's. I think St. Mark's has a unique opportunity to be at the forefront, not just for itself, but for Altadena, because of the values that it espouses. Years ago, because of redlining and other things that you mentioned, there was a conscious decision as the church formed the school to make sure that it was open to everybody. Talk a little bit about, in your understanding of that history, the people who came up with that plan or the next generation. What made so clear-minded to be on the right side of history in that way?
I don't know what made them so clear-minded. I have no idea. People always talk about being on the right side of history. I just think that there has been a long history of people who wanted to be on the right side of history, who saw the best in people and who saw the best in community. They saw the way that things should be. They saw opportunity, they saw hope, they saw promise. They saw love, and they just built on that. That is the foundation, and they just continue to build on that. And I think I mentioned how I have this God-given ability to find nurses that have that same passion. I think Altadena had that ability
To find folks like that.
to find folks like that, to draw those people in. And the people who didn't align left.
Yeah.
Our neighboring cities were built out of white flight. So those that were not concerned stayed. And they're
And
still
maybe
there.
maybe this will be another one of those examples of Altadena's historical significance. Part of, I want to thank you publicly for the opportunity to visit the school. It was a very emotional experience. There were two buildings or another campus that was recently built. Can you share with our audience how that campus was saved
Yes.
and how that signifies something deeper about St. Mark's?
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak for me. St. Mark's had this beautiful green door, and the first time I walked through it, I was welcomed in there like family, and you just felt it. I think the majority of the families that were there walked through that green door and felt what I felt. And it gave you this love for the school and the campus because they love our children. I have been at that school for 10 years, and I get compliments. My son has graduated from there and is now on to another school. He has gone to summer school at other places. He's done other programs. It never fails that I get an email or a phone call home that says, your son is one of the kindest, most respectful, loving, funny, quick-witted, confident kids, natural leader, everywhere he goes. St. Mark's mirrored what we were trying to instill at home. And I think every family is reaping the benefit of that. With that said, when the fires happened, some fathers ran up to the school. They saved their home, or maybe their home was gone, and they said, let's check on our home away from home. The campus was burning, but there was a brand new preschool that was just built, that was getting ready to open in January or February of this year, like now, for a brand new preschool campus. And it was beautiful. It's beautiful. There was a lot of fundraisers and a lot of different initiatives that were done to build that campus. And everyone was very excited about it and the promise that it had for the school. And so I think those dads went there to check on the school, and they saw that the preschool was still standing. So there was a hand pump, because the new playground had a splash pad for the kids. And they pumped that water, and they were throwing it on the little embers that were lighting up around the preschool. And they took a folding chair, and they went to the sandbox. And they took that chair, and they used it as a shovel to put out fires. And they used a hose to hose things down. And they ran from place to place around there. You could see where the fire came over the wall and where they put it out. And it was 3 men. One was a past alum, and 2 fathers, both in my daughter's 2nd grade class. So they haven't been there as long as I have. But there was this deep desire to save what the community had built.
Yeah.
I don't think anything could explain or encompass what St. Mark's is
Yeah.
more than that.
And also the sense of leadership. I think Jen Tolbert was talking about
Yeah.
other kids, including your other child, how they are perceived when they go to other schools. They run for student body president, they show up, they lead. There's something in its DNA that really speaks to thinking beyond just self.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be called upon now to be the center of that build out.
Yeah.
I know. I was trying to talk for you so that I gave you a little break, but it is emotional.
It is. I adore my kids. I am their biggest fan. I really am. To send them off into the world and to entrust your children with other people is very difficult. That's not an easy task as a parent.
Yeah.
To have them so loved and so cared for that they go out into the world and they represent me and my husband well. They represent their community well. It's a beautiful thing, and it has a ripple effect. And I'm so thankful for that. I have I sit here and I think about my middle daughter, Gianna. My daughter struggled socially. She has severe anxiety. We had a lot of assessments done. The school was the one who said, you know, we noticed that Gianna thinks differently. We noticed that there's something special about Gianna. We want to come alongside her and know how to teach her best. We want to get her an assessment. I couldn't afford the assessment at the time. They helped with the cost of the assessment. The assessment came back that she had an auditory processing difference. And they said, you know, we appreciate this assessment, but there's something more. We think this is a symptom of something because she's not all that she can be in the classroom. There's something in Gianna. There's more to her than this. We want to know the best way to help her. So through COVID and right after COVID, we had another assessment done that they helped. And I had my thoughts, my suspicions as a mom. I was like, I think she might be on the spectrum, but I didn't say anything because I wanted the professional's opinion. And sure enough, she came back that she's high functioning, she's on the spectrum, and we started getting her into therapies and we started working on her anxieties and her phobias. And the therapist came at the recommendation of St. Mark's. And now Gianna is in her 6th grade year. And she just ran for class president.
So
She didn't get it, but
she ran.
She ran and she gave a speech. And I sat there while she gave the speech. And I could hear people say, kids, her, like,
For peers.
for peers, 4th, 5th grade, a little below her, wow, she sounds like an activist.
Yeah. You should be proud of those kids. They're
I am
beautiful kids.
so proud of that.
Yeah, I'm proud of them.
I am so proud of her.
Yeah.
I am proud of that. I am proud of the community that I put my daughter in, who saw in her what I got to see in her at home, in her safe space.
safe
I always saw that in her, but she wasn't showing that to anyone else. She needed extra support. And St. Mark's,
They volunteered it.
they
Cool thing. You
they
didn't have to fight
saw
for
it
it.
in
Yeah.
her. They said there's
They looked for it.
the words they had were,
Yeah.
there's more to her than what she's showing up right now. There's something special about her.
That's love.
We have to unlock that. They saw her for her.
But it's what education should be.
It is, and that's what family should be, and that's what community should be.
Yeah.
And when a community loves you, they'll see you for who you are.
And quite frankly, there's a risk that all these things won't be factored in the build out.
Right.
And that's a scary thought.
Yes, and that's what Altadena worries about. These corporations coming in and pushing out the community that's there. But I will stand 10 toes down on this. I don't know very many people who are that connected to their elementary school. High school, maybe. College, absolutely.
Yeah.
But how many people come back to their elementary school? St. Mark's has a strong alumni community because I think you understand how important your foundation is. Their whole lives are built on the foundation that St. Mark's laid. And I think that's what keeps drawing the alumni back. I think that's what draws the parents back. I think that's what draws the community back. And I think that's why it is so well loved. It's a strong, poured foundation.
From your lived experience personally, I got a chance to see your home.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was really taken aback by, there were communities where everything burned down, and there were other places where you'd see one house burned down and everything else intact.
Yeah.
To see those homes intact, and then see somehow your home in the midst of 4 homes burned down, that must have been difficult.
It wasn't. And it goes back to my grandparents. My grandparents lost a son when he was 12 years old. And she said she used to struggle and say, why me, God? Why take my only son? And she got to a point where she would say, why not me? Why not me? Why am I exempt? Why do I think so highly of myself that I'm exempt from trials and tribulations? Why not me? So, why not me? Why should someone else have their house burned down and not me?
How is it different from the miles and miles of...
Right. So, it's, we tell our kids life is a journey. It's, you go where life takes you. Life is about experiences. Not all experiences are good.
And it's hard to see in the midst of those experiences where the end will be. But at some point, there is an end.
Yeah. And the houses next to us, they still have their own challenges. We had our neighbors, to one side of us, Fatima and John, they have 2 young children and 2 high school children. They just moved into their home less than a year before this happened. They can't go back. They can't go back right now. There's too much debris, too much ash, too much danger for their children to be there. So they're displaced. To the right of us is Jasmine and her husband, and they have 2 young kids. And they're not back home either. And they're displaced. And, not only that, with my mother-in-law's home, she used her home to send her 2 sons to college. She was a single mom, very poor, very low income. She worked 3 jobs to be able to buy that house and pay into that house. Then she borrowed against that house to send her boys off to college for a chance at a better future, and she got that. There are multiple people in Altadena whose home is their generational wealth, and the home is standing, but they lost the equity in their home. Wow. They lost their ability to send their kids to college because they don't have the equity, or they're upside down now. Wow. There's so many layers to it. So yeah, my house is gone, but the houses that are still standing still have their own challenges.
Oh my God, that's really interesting. This has really affected people and their children, and in some cases, what they have to pass down.
Absolutely. This is their generational wealth. This is their opportunity. So when we say we have to take care of our seniors, we do. When we say we do not want our homes sold to corporations, there's a reason for that. And when we say we want to educate our children on the Altadena way, there is a reason for that. It's so much bigger than the fire. It is what Altadena stands for generationally.
And not as an expert, but as someone who's affected by this, what are the immediate steps being taken to help families like yours that are affected, or schools like St. Mark's, or businesses like the one where you got the hardware store? What are immediate steps that are being taken at different levels that you're aware of?
There's the SBA loans, there's FEMA, there's grants, there's multiple grants that are out there. There's different workshops that people could go to. There's a lot of outreach that's happening to our community to provide those options to people, which is great, and they need that help. So I'm thankful for that.
So in terms of, whenever you have bureaucracies, you don't just unlock it immediately. Even if they're reasonable, whether they are or not, what are some of the challenges, even though these grants are available, small to big, what are challenges you're facing, which would mean other members of the community are facing, that would help if those weren't there?
So FEMA's been wonderful, but there's so many steps. Upload this, go to I think the FEMA, our property hasn't been assessed yet, still, and there's a lot of homes that haven't. I don't think there's enough people to assess all of the damage that's there, and so there's delayed funds that are there. There needs to be a close eye on what people are charging for rent in the areas. Where are we placing people? Are we losing our family, the schools that are still standing? Like we were talking to the principal of John Muir High School. They're doing a phenomenal job. That school is incredible.
There's so many heroes in this.
Oh, it is incredible. So many heroes is the biggest understatement. I am stunned at the people that are coming together in a variety of different ways. I'm not shocked. I guess I shouldn't say I'm stunned. I just, to see it all coming forward is incredible, and it is inspiring because it's the deep love for the community and that's there. But the principal of John Muir said, we're just letting our kids get to campus when they can, not showing up at noon, but like if they're late, it's okay because they're coming from Rancho Cucamonga, they're coming from
God.
Inglewood, because they're displaced.
For those of you who don't know, Rancho Cucamonga is probably an hour or minimum or more away. Inglewood, in traffic, it would probably take as much, right?
And we lost our car, so
Yeah, and you're driving your mother-in-law.
my mother-in-law's car because we lost our car. So, you know, are these people in a position to get another car? Could they finance another car? Could they afford another car to commute them? How are they getting back to school? How are they getting back to their routine? Are they going to have to start the new year, you know, or the new school year at a different school without the friends that they've had their entire lives? You know, there's so many variables to this. So how are we getting our children to campus? How the senior center is gone. My mother-in-law volunteered at the senior center, and that was their social life, and that's what they would do, and they would have all these events. Our children lost their routine. The seniors lost their routine. The families, you know, there's community members that in one day they lost their home, they lost their business, their small business that was in Altadena, they lost their church, and they lost their children's school.
Wow.
They lost their life that day. What do you do to make sure that our community comes back? Who oversees making sure that we don't lose everything?
That's a really good question, and I want to come back to that and spend some time on that, right? Like in terms of just your thoughts, your perceived thoughts of the community, in terms of representation, in terms of those decisions. Mm-hmm. But the level of grief must be tremendous. Like, you know, even what we talked about offline when your son said, "I miss my home," or your daughter sobbing when she sees the home. But you're seeing it in adults who've lost everything from a mental health standpoint. And I know people are trying to just tread by and get by every day. Talk to me about the level of grief and the level of just depression or sadness, even as people carry on.
You know, I see a lot of posts. There's a lot of there's so many layers to it. Saw one woman post something that said, who can't cook anymore? Because she doesn't have her favorite pot and her wooden spoon and her kitchen that she's so comfortable in. She can't bring herself to make a home-cooked meal because she misses her favorite spoon. It's small, but it's huge all at the same time. I used to drive out of my community and I would see the crossing guard and I would wave to him every morning. And then we would turn and we would see the same kid riding his bike down the street. And we saw him for 3 years, and so I felt like I watched him grow up, and I knew how late we were to school, knowing where we passed him on the road riding the bike. And then sometimes we would be late because we would be passing peacocks. You know, they would cross the street, and then we'd go a little bit further, and there was a mom with a special needs son who would wheel her son out to the school bus, and they would load him onto the school bus, and we would see her every Monday through Friday. Then we would go a little bit further and we'd turn the corner and we see the same man walking his dog. And we would go and we would see we would pass the Bunny Museum. We would turn and we would see the St. Mark's Crossing Guard. And then we would pull into the campus. I miss my community. Everybody misses those things. Like they were just taken overnight and it's just very violating. To feel that. There's so many things to grieve. You know, there's gratitude fatigue because there's been such an outpouring of love and support by our neighboring communities and our those that have survived. Like people are like, here, I have meals for you, or I'll offer you a ride. But there's a gratitude. I am so grateful, deeply grateful. But you start to feel guilty at some point when you're on the other side of the table and you're used to helping your community and you're just take. There's a gratitude fatigue that starts to kick in, and you feel guilty for needing or taking so much. It's hard. My daughters cry, and people ask my daughter, "Let me get you anything. What do you want?" And my middle daughter said, "I want a hallway." And then she just bursts into tears because her favorite memories are being silly in the hallway with her brother.
It's interesting because with your son, you told me a story as you were giving me a tour of the neighborhood. The pandemic was another traumatic event, but it was different, right? Like, because you know how you guys would go down and everybody would be outside, and then he'd go play with his friend.
Yeah.
Well, where's that friend living now? Where's he living? You don't have your routine, and for children, a lack of that routine is devastating.
Everybody's scattered. On Friday, my son had a sleepover with three other friends: Carter, Tripp, Isaac, and my son Stefan. Everybody, they were in miles from each other. You could walk to each other's houses, and Carter was the only one who didn't lose his home. Isaac, Tripp, and my son lost their home, but we were in the same hotel that same week together because we said, we got to get them together somehow, some way. But now one's in Burbank and one's in Glendale and we're in La Crescenta. And that was their safe space. That's their therapy. For young 14-year-old boys, it's not a natural nature for them to sit down and boo-hoo cry. It's just not. They are dealing with their grief in their own way, and they've all shed tears. But them being together and having their camaraderie is very important for them and their healing process. But everybody's scattered. So how do you facilitate that?
And for you as a mother, while running a business and having 3 children who are grieving in their own ways,
Yes.
and a mother is very sensitive to that. They don't have to speak a word.
Yes.
How are you consoling them while at the same time experiencing all the pressures and grief and running a business?
The only way I know how. Being very authentic. As authentic with my kids as possible. Josie has some choice words. This sucks. I hate this. Me too. I remembered, right after the fire, I remembered the flag that was over my grandfather's coffin was gone. I crumpled to my knees and I boo-hoo cried in front of the kids. And they all came around me and put their hands on my back and said, "It's okay, Mommy. It's okay." And I wipe myself off and I say, "It is going to be okay. It's not okay right now, but it's going to be okay. We're on the road to okay." And then when they have their moments, I rub their back and I say the same things. And we talk about it and we say, I try to be as authentic as possible in those moments and as honest as possible in those moments. And I give myself a moment to grieve and I rely on my friends and I call them in the car and I'm like, today's a rough day. And they come around me and that's replenishing for my soul. And then I'm able to come to my kids and do that for them. But in those moments, if I have to break down, I do. And then I pick myself up and I remind them, long line of strong women. We're going to get through this. We're going to be okay. I don't know how, but we are.
And I'm sure there's a lot of that going on.
Oh, yeah.
In the Palisades, where you guys are. You mentioned earlier who oversees it, and I know that was more of a question.
Yeah.
But I think if we start from St. Mark's, one of the things that I love is this community that we've described of
Yes.
people that went there, people who have historical ties to the church, people like Jen Tolbert who loves the kids, people like your family. They really have their heart in the right place.
Yes.
So I have no doubt it will get rebuilt the same way, if not actually better.
Oh, 100%.
Because those who are in control of the process, or who are overseeing it, understand the soul of the place.
Yes.
When you said who oversees it, do you have any idea who's overseeing the Altadena process in the same way?
There are people in place who are overseeing it. Yes, there are people who are overseeing it. There are certain political figures that are there that are doing an excellent job. Some are doing a good job, and some need to listen to the community a little bit more. But they are overseeing it. I liken it to my business, and I tell people all the time, you can own a company and you have a passion for it, But how do you get the buy-in of your employees to have the same passion that you have if it's just a job for them? For the people that are overseeing things, is this just a job for you, or do we have your buy-in? Do you have the same buy-in that we do as a community? Because this community is our small business. This is our passion project. My question is, who is overseeing it? And is this just a job that you go to, or is this your passion project?
I think that's an incredible question. So if you had, we have an opportunity to talk to the Congresswoman who's in charge of that area, Judy Chu. What would Altadena want to say to her? What would Altadena want to say to the Board of Supervisors representative and even others? What would Altadena want them to know very specifically about what Altadena expects?
Altadena understands that it's never going to be exactly the same. But we're not going to be sold to the highest bidder, and we're not going to be forgotten. And we are a community force to be reckoned with, but we are a community that's led on love and compassion and kindness, and we will fight for that.
Okay. And I'm excited to join you in that fight. And as we close, I want to highlight a few things, tying everything together. The most successful communities have different sectors of that community. Those in business who are successful, who drive the name recognition of every time you succeed, every time your company succeeds, it tells the story of Altadena, the story of perseverance.
Yes.
This has become now part of your story.
Yes.
When St. Mark's is built again and is stronger and better, it tells that story.
Yes.
I think there are a lot more. I'm just aware of the few people that I've come in contact with, you and the head of school. I think you guys, it's a little bit of a heavy crown to bear, but you have an opportunity to share this story and share it globally. And I think that's tied to the inception and motivation of how you started your companies. So part of what I love about entrepreneurship and what we love here at the Blueprint is how do we look within and how do we take what's within and drive that change in a way that is really best for the community, right? So the traditional model is this kind of understanding of like, oh, someone's going to oversee it. And I see this world where what happens at St. Mark's could dictate that the people of Altadena oversee it, and that the representatives, even the money that comes in, aligns with that vision, which will be best for everybody.
Right.
So I hope that in the midst of your grief, just like your grandparents in the midst of theirs, continue to find this resolve that I already see in you, where you look back and you go and your children go and your community goes, wow, did we really go through that? Look what we've become.
Yes.
And I think people like myself are just privileged that despite the fact that this is a moment of grief for you, that you allow us to stand next to you. And I feel certain if they were to know this story, there's a whole army of people who will just be attracted to what you guys are. Because we all want our children to go to school like that.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And
Yes.
we all want our families to live in a place where they're loved and where they're valued.
They're seen.
And they're seen. And I think that speaking to the fire captain this morning, irrespective of who the traditional model expects to oversee this, how do we start? You already have a room for St. Mark's, but how do we start with a room for Altadena that's 90% or 80% Altadenans? Is that what you call yourself?
Altadenians.
Altadenians, okay.
Yeah.
And then you have these other people that are fully aligned with that but have resources and understanding.
It's always the schools, because you start with the schools, because you take care of your children and you take care of your ancestors, or the ones that came before you, and the families will stay and they will come. If you start with not just St. Mark's, but if you rebuild the schools, the families will come and they will live and they will thrive and they will grow old there. And if we take care of the ones that came before us and after us, it is the perfect recipe for success in a city.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we all see each other go through grief, like people lose their parents, and then people also see others lose their parents. And it's a weird thing, right? Like, you know it's going to come.
Yeah.
Each of our moments is coming. And to see you go through your grief with such class, to see your school and that experience that we shared in visiting, it's really a privilege, and it brings an opportunity for our humanity. And I can't wait to see St. Mark's get rebuilt. And to do this again when your home's rebuilt, and there's some sense of that's coming back. Not when it's over, because it might take.
It's going to take some
a
time.
little bit, but there'll be incremental, you know.
Yeah.
So I really want to thank you for coming on the show, and I can't wait to use part of the show to create an awareness of St. Mark's as we rebuild St. Mark's. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you. All right. Thank you for joining us on The Blueprint. That was a very touching episode with entrepreneur, chief executive officer of healthcare company who was tremendously affected within the Altadena fires. This is a preface to what we plan to do with her and our next guest in rebuilding the city of Altadena, and very specifically St. Mark's School. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you join us next time on The Blueprint. No more, no more. Thank you.